I think staying with Quantimer and just anyone staying with one employer for so long, what does that give you? I think it's the strength of relationships with us. We've kind of built a business together, and it's something that we're incredibly proud of.
Growing a career at one organisation can propel you into leadership positions. Our guest today on Talent at the Top started their career as a graduate and worked their way through to managing director and now UK head of Quantum Restructuring. Chris, thank you so much for coming on Talent at the Top. I think one of the most interesting things about your career for me is the fact that you've got so much longevity and loyalty to one employer. And we don't see that very much these days, I must admit. That's almost like a dying art, people sort of staying at the one firm. And as a recruiter, it's not something I love, but it's worked out for you big time. So I'm interested to understand why you decided to stick with the one firm.
I think for me, just staying at Quantimer so long and one firm, it's like there's been opportunities. I've never really felt the need to kind of move. I've always felt supported by kind of my peers and kind of people around me. I've enjoyed it. I still enjoy it. I work with some really great people. And so because you've got all of those ingredients in place, working with good people that you trust, being stretched, learning all the time, being exposed to different areas of the role and growing personally as well as the firm. I think there's enough there to keep anyone interested, and I certainly have been, and that's perhaps a big reason why I've stayed so long.
Yeah, well, I'd imagine you'd have had an opportunity to change course because I guess RSM's had a huge institution that went into administration, and I guess you decided at that point to stick true with some of those staff that you were referring to, your colleagues, and help build a business like Quantum. But you must have had other suitors that you had options to at least talk with. So what was the sort of decision to keep going along with those people?
I think, yeah. I mean, there were kind of other options, and there always are for everybody in the industry. It's kind of a hot industry at the moment. There's kind of, always options available. But yeah, going back to what I said, it's kind of the people really. We're a people kind of business. I'm working with some absolutely kind of quality people that I trust, and I've kind of built up those relationships over kind of a number of years. So you do build up a huge kind of amount of trust and respect to your kind of colleagues. And yeah, that's kind of a large reason why we'd have stayed together, not just me, but also as a group of kind of people as well.
Yeah. Well, I think for your journey, let's say, from coming in as a graduate to the role you're in now, there must have been maybe moments where you've gone, have I backed the right horse? Did I make the right decisions? But the firm has grown so quickly and has sort of really changed what it was many years back to what it is now. I guess you feel that actually it was right to stick the course.
I think so. You'll have those days where you think, is this the right thing to be doing? Always. But it's kind of, Quantum grew significantly over a relatively short period of time. We've learned a lot, had some amazing kind of experiences whilst growing the firm, and got to reference of Carl Jackson, being kind of a huge kind of driving force kind of behind that, and, learned huge amounts from Carl. And I'm still in touch with Carl. He still supports me all the time. So yeah, I haven't got enough kind words to say about Carl. But yeah, as a group of people, we've kind of had a great ride, and yeah, it's been kind of really good.
Well, I'm keen to go back to the beginning of your career, because a lot of people fall into insolvency. That's the sort of response we tend to get when we ask people, how did you get into the profession?
Yeah, that's true.
True for you?
No, I'm kind of bucked the trend a little bit.
Okay.
So I was kind of one of these strange kind of people that wanted to be an accountant. So going into kind of university, studied accounting and finance, learned a bit more about accountancy, and then shock horror realised that, okay, I think I've made the wrong choice here. Perhaps this isn't for me. I think that was kind of partway through doing an audit module. That kind of realisation struck. And then we had a kind of some optional modules to choose at university, and one of those was insolvency. I thought, I don't know anything about insolvency, but it sounds interesting. Let's kind of do that. And a guy came in, took the kind of lectures, and we were doing, I think, a case study on Queen's Moat hotels, I think it was. And it was really interesting problem solving. And I
Mm.
thought, this is something for me. And I'll go and pursue this. So when I kind of finished university, I looked at sort of what was kind of near to sort of where I lived at home, and found a kind of job sort of at the bottom end, and sort of managed to sort of get my way in there.
Very good. Yeah, you're definitely bucking the trend there.
Yeah.
I think what we notice as recruiters in the insolvency profession, retention of talent is tricky, and certainly at that 2 to 3 year mark, where I think a lot of people put themselves out there to try and see if there's a better opportunity, but quickly realise that actually it's insolvency and the profession of insolvency that's not for them. Maybe it's too administrative, maybe the work they've been given is too mundane. But I
Yeah.
guess for you, you've clearly pushed through that marker. Was there something in particular that kept you hungry at that point?
I think I was always given the opportunity, as sort of a young sort of graduate, sort of in the role, to sort of go out and sort of do different things, and I was sort of always trusted.
Mm.
And that's the way kind of I view sort of, life at sort of Quantuma, how we should kind of treat the rest of our people, and sort of, treat them as grown-ups. There's a larger element of trust, in their ability to sort of do the job. So I think, yes, I mean, you referenced that some of the jobs sort of at the bottom end can be a little bit mundane, and I'd like to come back to that, actually. But I think for me, it was kind of having that trust, having that freedom to sort of operate whilst just getting the job done. Yeah, that kind of made it fine.
Yeah, but let's talk about that sort of junior end of the marketplace. You said sometimes it can. Well, I think I said it can sometimes feel a bit mundane for certain people.
Yeah.
What did
So
you want to
I
expand
think that's
on?
kind of ripe to change. So yes, there are kind of a lot of sort of mundane, sort of repetitive elements of the job. I think with kind of sort of artificial intelligence coming in, automation as well, a lot of those jobs are likely to be sort of taken away. So that's kind of great news for, I think, anyone looking at the industry as a kind of newcomer,
Mm.
and kind of not having to sort of do such kind of mundane sort of work, and then suddenly they're working on much more sort of valued sort of pieces of work, where they're kind of looking at more advisory and more investigation sort of side of the role. I think everybody would agree that's sort of a lot more interesting. And yeah, that's the way that I think the profession's going to go. That's something that we're heavily kind of looking into, and looking to kind of sort of make work less mundane for our colleagues.
Yeah, well, it will definitely help with retention levels in the profession for sure. And it's interesting you mentioned about AI, because I do think that is going to make a big difference, not just the insolvency profession, but professional services as a whole, certainly at those entry levels. So going back to your career then, when did you decide that you wanted to become an IP?
I think it was kind of fairly early on, where I kind of realised that I always wanted to sort of progress, and part of that progression was taking your professional exams, doing as a CPI, and then I did my accountancy exams. So I did my ACCA, and then I did the JIB. But I always had a view that I wanted to sort of get my qualifications, both accounting and kind of insolvency, and then ultimately start to take kind of basically appointments.
Yeah, you got all the badges, CPI accountant,
A
and
few.
yeah. Okay. I know that becoming an IP is tough, and there's a lot of sacrifice that goes into, I guess, the time spent trying to qualify. And there's a lot of people that have just got their results on
Absolutely.
the JIB exams, and a lot of sacrifice has gone there. So, what was your own experience of trying to get yourself qualified?
Um, it is sacrifice. I've done quite a few exams, and the JIB was by far the toughest sort of set of exams that I've ever done. So they stretch you in a kind of different way, that kind of other exams sort of don't. They put you under a lot of time pressure. But it is sacrifice. Fortunately, I was kind of personally, I was at a stage where I was just about to get married, so my pressure was
Mm.
that I had a kind of wedding sort of just around the corner, from kind of sitting the exams, and I didn't want to have to sort of have any retakes. Otherwise, that was kind of post wedding, and kids come after that normally,
Yeah.
which they did for me. So I had those pressures. But you have to sacrifice a lot. I sort of pretty much sort of wrote off about sort of 9 to sort of 12 months of my life. I had a very understanding sort of partner,
Mm.
who kind of supported me through late nights of coffee and chocolate that sort of got me through the revision.
Yeah.
But it was worth it. And so I do kind of sympathise with anyone doing the exams, especially kind of people that have got kind of a young family. Yeah, it's really kind of difficult.
It is difficult, and you've alluded to something there that I was going to actually ask you a bit later, but I think we're at a good point to talk about it, which is balancing the day job
Sure.
with, I guess, the personal life.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people, as we just said, have got those exams. They've been spending the last few months busy revising, and they might have children, they might not. But either way, it's balancing what is a demanding career, demanding job, sitting those exams,
Yeah.
and a home life. How did you, other than chocolate, go about dealing with that?
Um, I think it's kind of you've got to have an understanding of partner and family if that's your situation, and so they've got to sort of buy into the fact that why you're doing this, and so that was a large part of it for me. So I was allowed the freedom to kind of spend sort of my spare time studying, which is must have been sort of quite dull for my wife now. But it's important to kind of have that buy-in. I think kind of it changes balance when you kind of sort of progress sort of through your career, and you have a family and you have kids, and yeah, it means something sort of different then, and it is difficult to sort of find balance in life, I think, for anyone.
Yeah, no, it really is. Okay, so now you're an IP.
Yeah.
When did you qualify?
I think it was about 2008, 2009.
Okay,
Yeah,
around the time of the crash.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a
I
point
was
in time.
actually, when I was studying, all the kind of the video screens were showing kind of the crash kind of happening and all the share prices kind of plunging. And I was thinking, yeah, this isn't a bad time to
Oh, yeah.
get my qualification.
Well, I'm sure you've seen so many cases and appointments where you've made a real difference. Is there one or two that stick in your mind that you think, I'm really proud of that? As an IP, we did a great job.
I think it's just, I still get a kick out of advising anyone, to be honest, and sort of really helping out. And it might be, someone that's sort of, got quite a small business, and it might not turn into a job for us. So I had a call yesterday with someone that was facing sort of some challenges, and just sort of 10 minutes on the phone with someone like myself who's got the experience and qualifications and can sort of set them on the sort of the right path. And I'm always happy to sort of spend that time with people.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just get a kick out of kind of helping people that are in difficult sort of situations. In terms of sort of particular sort of jobs, yeah, there've been some sort of really sort of nice sort of big jobs that we've kind of done well on, but it's just about, for me, it's about sort of making those kind of right decisions, being able to kind of help people and guide them. And I still get a kick out of that to this day.
That's great. That's great. And so last year, your role changed quite significantly because you're still operating as an IP, providing that advice, as you've just said, but also taking on a wider strategic role at Consumer as sort of head of UK restructuring.
Yeah.
How do you balance the two roles?
It's definitely got busier.
Yeah, I bet.
And it's I don't think there's a there's a kind of an answer here, sort of, Adam. It is challenging. It does kind of stretch you. It does sort of take up more of your time. I think for me, it's just about, I'm lucky. I've got kind of a great team of people around me that support sort of me in my role. So without that kind of team of people, sort of I wouldn't be able to kind of do sort of what I do or have any kind of impact. So yeah, I think it's just about having quality people around you.
Yeah, it makes a big difference. Everyone's got to play their role.
Yeah.
I was going to actually ask you about the key characteristics that separate someone like yourself who's out winning work and building those relationships outside of the firm, and perhaps those that are technically really, really strong.
Yeah.
And their sort of skill set is best on delivery of work. I'm sure you know some incredible people that are good at that. What do you think are the key characteristics between the two?
I think, a firm needs both, to be honest. So I would class myself as technically okay. I wouldn't say I was technically kind of brilliant. But yeah, I'm pretty good at winning work.
Yeah.
And so that's a strength. So you definitely need people that are technically sort of very good, and we've got so many people in our team that are. It's kind of amazing. And so that's the strength of the team, and having kind of quality people around you. You also need your work winners, kind of in an organisation, and yeah, like me, sort of, I might not be technically brilliant. I know enough, but yeah, I'm sort of not too bad at sort of winning work. I think if you can combine the two, and just sort of really good at work winning, and really good technically, then that's kind of the winning combination. But more often than not, it's a mix of kind of the two. But there's an absolute role, I think, kind of in most firms, for anyone with kind of one or the other. And so that's kind of fine. You don't need to sort of necessarily be a kind of a work winner if you're technically kind of very good and capable. So it's just a mix.
Yeah. Okay. And so your role that you're in now, that the more wider strategic role, give us a sense of what that has meant to you day to day and week to week. What does your week now look like with that added responsibility?
Yeah, I mean, there's kind of, more meetings now. There's much more strategic kind of focus. It's kind of looking at kind of financials, budgets, sort of forecasts, sort of looking ahead. So yeah, much more of the role is around that. I'm doing a kind of a roadshow sort of at the moment where I'm kind of traveling around all of the offices. And sort of updating them with the plans, sort of around the business and the future, and that's been sort of fantastic, sort of to connect with kind
Yeah.
of people, and you know that you've got kind of good colleagues who are kind of fantastic, and kind of, sort of extremely capable. But it's another thing going to sort of see them sort of face to face and spending some time with them, and it's been kind of a really great thing to do over the last few weeks.
Is it difficult, I guess, trying to bring all that together? Certainly for a business that's growing at the pace that Quantuma is, the culture is something you're wanting to retain strongly and ensuring that's consistent throughout the group. How difficult is it ensuring that everyone is aligned when you are so far away from some of those
It
offices?
gets harder. Sort of the bigger you grow, the harder it is to kind of sort of maintain that. But this is where I think it's been kind of important to sort of get around the business and see people kind of physically. It's kind of, it's not the same doing it over kind of a Teams call with a kind of bunch of people on there. It's much better kind of to see people sort of in person. I think culture's such an interesting and important kind of aspect. We've kind of always been proud of having a very entrepreneurial kind of culture at Quantuma. It's difficult to sort of maintain that as you grow, but we still are sort of fiercely entrepreneurial sort of in our approach. And we champion that kind of across the business.
Are there certain initiatives that this year you're really hoping to instill and I guess put your marker on it?
There's always new initiatives. So we're always looking at kind of different things around data, and what we do with that, with our kind of investigation. So there's something that we've got in the works kind of right now on that, and using kind of AI.
Yep.
So yeah, there's always kind of new things. I think it's kind of important to innovate. There's always different areas of the market where I think kind of we need to kind of focus on and attack, and there's opportunities and strategy around how you do that collectively and sort of hunt as a pack, and provide kind of value to people that need it. So yeah, there's always kind of innovation to be had.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the business is growing at such a rate that you have to keep, I guess, installing and instilling new initiatives, things that allow the business to stand out from the crowd and also just ensure you maintain that level of level of growth. I'm going to come away from within Quantum and the day-to-day job because I find whenever I speak to someone operating at your level, the home life is as important as it is in the work life.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit about what you do outside of work and what a good weekend looks like for you, Chris.
So a good weekend to the reality. So yeah, I'm married. I've got kind of two boys, and they are 12 and 14. So yeah, my weekends, I'm sort of predominantly a taxi driver to my kids.
Yep.
They're kind of very sporty and play a lot of cricket. So I am sort of driving them invariably around to sort of their cricket training and fixtures, all their kind of social occasions. So that is kind of what a weekend sort of looks like to me. There might be the odd meal out, sort of, as a family.
Yeah.
But I imagine I'm similar to most other kind of parents, sort of at the weekends. I watched the rugby this weekend just gone.
Yeah, very good.
Pretty disappointing to be an England rugby fan at the moment.
Yeah.
But I love my sport, and so yeah, you're kind of I'm very comfortable sort of talking about sport with people as people that know me.
Yeah.
Or kind of they'll know that.
Well, I've got all this to come. I've got two young boys, but they're both toddlers. So I guess you've almost got the roadmap that I know what's coming, at least from what you've said. So I guess my question around that is, and I from personal experience running a business and operating where my career is really important to me, but as is my home life, and it's that balance between the two, because you don't want to lose what you've got at home and not be present, and you want to guide your family and your children. How have you throughout your career and in your role now been able to get that balance right?
I think it's actually got easier over the last sort of few years, certainly since the pandemic, where sort of flexible working's really kind of taken off. So I think kind of being a parent sort of in the workplace, it's kind of definitely gotten easier as there's more flexibility. As a firm, what we do is we have kind of core hours. So we work sort of 10 till 4. We do, I think, 3 days a week in the office. And so that gives people the flex. So if they want to do kind of, nursery or school drop-offs in the morning or in the evening, they've got the kind of flexibility to kind of do that. We're always super supportive of kind of parents, and anyone that sort of needs to be sort of flexible. And I think that works. And it goes back to what I was saying, I think at the beginning about sort of, treating people, giving them trust, sort of trusting them to do their jobs. And that goes a long way, because it's not easy. You want to go and watch your kids sort of play sport.
It's important.
And perhaps they might be playing a school fixture on a Wednesday afternoon at sort of, 3:00. And you want to go and catch that. And what is more important than kind of watching your kids sort of do something like that, or do the kind of the pantomime or whatever. So yeah, I'm a huge kind of advocate of go and do it. Yeah, I'm a massive supporter of that.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of people that will be listening to this that are going through that at the moment. They're at a pivotal point in their career where they really do want to push and put time into it.
Yeah.
But they've also got, I guess, a key role to play at home. And ensuring that they're there for those key moments. So it isn't an easy thing to get right. And sometimes you feel like you've not got the balance right. But the fact that you feel you've been able to do that, and it's got easier since, I guess, the sort of flexible working arrangements that have come in since COVID, that's great. How pivotal was that for you and Quantuma, the COVID pandemic and what came out of it in respect to the way of working? It's big shift.
We were kind of really well equipped, sort of thinking back going into it. We sort of hadn't planned for that, obviously, but our systems were such that we just literally sort of picked up our laptops, went home, and everything just worked. And we didn't have to sort of change anything. I think kind of is getting back into the office took some time for kind of people to kind of readapt sort of back to that. And I think possibly that took longer than people sort of thought. But now we're in this sort of, call it a hybrid sort of working environment, which most firms seem to have settled upon. Like I said, we do 3 days a week sort of in the office. My view is that it's important to kind of match sort of the senior people with the more junior people when they're in the office, because the junior people need senior people to kind of learn off. And so what we do is we have kind of team days where they're kind of set days of the 3 days that they're in the office. 2 of them are team days, so that we've got the team in the office at the same time. I think that's been a struggle for firms to sort of get back into that rhythm of work life, and it's been so different from going from 5 days down to sort of the pandemic all at home and then back to sort of hybrid working. But I think we're kind of in a happy sort of medium sort of at the moment. And like I said, it's really sort of fast tracked, flexible kind of working, in a professional services environment.
Yeah, well, with our own firm, anyone that's coming into it fresh, we're insistent on them being in the office every day so that they can learn from, as you said, the more experienced people. That it may not be as theoretical as this is how you operate in this exact scenario. It's more you're just absorbing what you're seeing and how to operate.
Yeah.
So if I think back to your career at the beginnings, I guess it was normal to be in every day. What did you really immerse yourself in to sort of get yourself as ready as you could be to keep progressing through? What lessons were you learning early?
I think everything in terms of putting my hand up and sort of wanting to sort of be involved and offering yourself forward. And I think kind of one of the main things that I did, and I realised quite early on, was starting to build a network. So I attended sort of quite a few sort of young professionals events, and they're sort of targeted at certain sort of sector of section of the market, and going there, sort of meeting kind of peers in other different sort of professional kind of services was great. And so I sort of twigged from quite a young sort of age that this was sort of the right thing to do. And that kind of network has sort of grown up sort of alongside me. So some have gone faster than others, but I'm still in touch with like quite a few of them now. But that was kind of a really sort of vital thing. I think if people want to sort of ultimately progress, in this industry and sort of become a licensed insolvency practitioner and win work, it's start to sort of build your network as early as possible.
Yeah. Has the profession changed much in that respect? I guess relationships is always and will always be the key
Yeah.
to a lot of careers, the strength of a relationship. But have you noticed changes from when you were in early on to what you see now?
I think in terms of sort of winning work and building relationships, I always describe it as, it's a people business.
Yeah.
So yeah, we sort of go to market. We're going to sit down in front of someone and sort of build a relationship and get to know them. We want to understand kind of what their kind of problems are and how we can help, and if there's a role for us, and if we can give any work back. So I still see that as very much a people kind of business, face to face. So no, I don't think it has changed sort of personally. There's obviously different ways that you can go to the market, and we explore that as well. But for me, and what I encourage sort of people to do, and my colleagues, is kind of it's still the sort of face to face, sort of direct to market sort of approach.
Yeah, understood. Okay. What keeps you hungry and motivated? You've been in the profession many years now. And perhaps your role as of last year, that's that next level, if you will. But what
Yeah.
what keeps the hunger alive?
I'm very competitive.
Okay.
And I think that helps. And so I don't like losing. And I think kind of a lot of people sort of, who are kind of insolvency practitioners, and sort of, doing a similar role, they'd say the same. I think sort of highly sort of competitive, sort of like to win, and yeah, still sort of get a kick out of like providing kind of, good advice. So yeah, for me, it's probably that.
How do you deal with scenarios where you don't win? I mean, that's
I don't like it.
well, it's something that is a real skill to try and learn early, I find.
I
So
think
how do you deal with
I
it?
think kind of I want to understand why. And so if I don't win sort of a piece of work, I just want to understand why, and so often I'll ask for feedback, and to say, why didn't it come my way, and if it's price, okay, fine, sort of live with that. If it's sort of something else, and it's kind of a learning point, then yeah, it's something kind of I'll look at and see whether there's anything we can do differently, and I think it's kind of everybody makes mistakes. That's part of kind of life and business life. But it's just, I've always said it's not nice making the same mistake twice.
Yeah.
And so mistakes are a massive opportunity to kind of learn. So I've always said, once we make a mistake, it's best to sort of talk about it. So what went right, what went wrong, and sort of learn from both.
You mentioned Carl earlier on
Yeah.
in our conversation, and I'm sure there's others that have had a big influence on your career. But how important is a good manager or a good sort of mentor or guide within an organisation?
I think huge. It's hugely kind of important at all levels, to sort of have a good sort of manager, and someone that supports you. I think kind of Quantima has a very supportive kind of ethos as a business, and we absolutely want people to kind of progress. So we kind of invested heavily in our sort of training program, and we've just sort of relaunched that. It's called Momentum. And so we put a lot of kind of thought behind that, and invested a lot. But the whole kind of point is that where people want to kind of progress in their careers, we are kind of making sure that we've got something for them at all levels. So having kind of a good manager kind of behind you saying, which direction do you want to go in? And it might be that people kind of just want to stay where they are, and they're sort of very happy, and they want to kind of hone their technical abilities, and that's kind of absolutely fine. Or it might be that they want to go all the way,
Yeah.
and progress, and we can kind of help map that out for them, and support them in their exams, give them training for kind of sales if that's what they need, and we do. And that sort of works really well. But it's just, I think, having that support for if people are ambitious and want to kind of progress, as a firm, we're there saying, we've got the platform for you and we will support you. So I think it's hugely kind of important.
Is all the training in-house?
The majority is kind of in-house. The professional exams would be kind of out, like the sort of the CPI and the JIB, as well as ACCA and anything like accounting qualifications. And we have external people come in that do kind of bespoke sales training. So yeah, it's a mix of kind of sort of there's some in-house sort of training, and then external for the kind of the qualifications.
Very good. Well, I mean, what I want to almost ask you now is to go back to the beginning of our conversation,
Yeah.
because as I said at the start, the theme of longevity in your career, I think has served you so well. If you were to look back, is there anything that sort of staying at Quantuma has given you that perhaps if you'd left it just wouldn't have happened?
I think staying with Quantuma and just anyone staying with one employer for so long, what does that give you? I think it's the strength of relationships. So there's people that I've been working sort of alongside, for sort of 10, 15, maybe some 20 years now. And that's a long time.
Yeah, it's a long
I've
time,
spent
yeah.
with anyone. Working alongside these people, you kind of build up sort of huge amounts of trust, deep relationships, understanding, and it's so easy to sort of work alongside people who you know sort of so well, and it's having that trust in them, that's built up over the years, and friendships as well with these people. So it's kind of with us, we've kind of built a business of together. And it's something that sort of we're incredibly proud of, and there's some really sort of deep friendships there.
Yeah, that's really, I mean, it's lovely to hear that, because I think sometimes when people are in the working environment, they're not necessarily looking for friendship, but it just sort of forms. And when you've been 20 years in with people that have, I guess, fought the good fight, let's say, and they're aligned to you completely on values and ethos, it must make the job just so much easier.
It certainly makes a lot of it sort of easier, where you've sort of built up that trust.
Yeah,
definitely.
So, one piece of advice for someone that is on the up in their career or beginning parts of their career that would make a real difference if they're wanting to get to the very top of the profession.
I think take the opportunities. That's kind of sort of probably my best piece of advice. Sometimes it's easy to stay quiet and keep your hand down. But there's always opportunities. So look for them, take them, do your studies, get out there, attend networking events, do all those things, and just sort of put your hand up. It will sort of take you sort of places. You won't necessarily know where, but it will definitely sort of take you places. And that's kind of probably my one sort of key bit of advice to sort of anyone sort of progressing through their career.
Seek out the opportunities and grab them.
Yeah, for
Very
sure.
good. Thank you so much, Chris. It's really nice hearing your story.